September 17th, Nitpicking or Unfussy. Priscilla decided to join me today. The scripture I chose today is Romans 14, 1-6, and at RSV. Welcome those who are weak in faith, but not for the purpose of quarreling over opinions. Some believe in eating anything, while the weak eat only vegetables. Those who eat must not despise those who abstain, and those who abstain must not pass judgment on those who eat, for God has welcomed them. Who are you to pass judgment on servants of one another? It is before their own Lord that they stand or fall, and they will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make them stand. Some judge one day to be better than another, while others judge all days to be alike. Let all be fully convinced in their own minds. Those who observe the day, observe it in honor of the Lord. Also those who eat, eat in honor of the Lord, since they give thanks to God. While those who abstain, abstain in honor of the Lord and give thanks to God. I chose this one because it addresses how we need to comport ourselves with one another. As the early church was taking shape, it took a long and often disputatious time for the community to agree on standards. There were quibbles about what food was banned, what food was legal to eat. Some abstained, others did not. Until 48 Common Era, all Gentiles who began to follow the way of Jesus had to be circumcised. There was a big fight about this at the early church council, and to the newcomers wanting to join, they must have clapped their hands in joy. At least the men. The timely and frequently forgotten advice Paul gave his new communities, however, seemed then and even now neglected, forgotten, metaphorically covered with cobwebs. In the coming centuries, the quibbles escalated and intensified. Those who did not believe the right way, orthodoxy, were imprisoned or murdered, some of the lucky ones being just banished. Gone were the simple words and message of Jesus. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Or even the Dalai Lama's summary of Buddhist belief, my religion is kindness. Martin Luther, the Catholic Augustinian monk who confronted the church he loved with his 95 Theses in 1517, was a biblical scholar, so he only accepted his canonical 66 books, leaving out the 6 that were not in Hebrew or Aramaic. So now the Catholic Church has 72 canonical books, while the Protestants have only 66. Something to remember when you're watching Jeopardy and get a biblical question. The Catholics believed that the words of consecration were truly able to turn the bread and wine into the literal body and blood of Christ, called transubstantiation, while the Lutherans opted for consubstantiation, stating that the bread and wine coexisted with the body and blood. My denomination, the Disciples of Christ, thinks of it as a sacred memorial, calling the community together to celebrate the life and teachings of Jesus. The list goes on, but you get the idea. A few days ago, I was sitting down next to our small country road, looking at the thigh-high weeds still confronting me while they were dancing in the wind. I had been working on this daunting project for literally months. The patch that had initially confronted me was well over 100 feet long, a dozen feet from the road to the next level surface in the yard. While gardening and yard care had once been one of my jobs for almost a decade, I had not done it for pay for almost 20 years. I was wearing a Santa cap to keep my hair from falling in my face, wearing very old clothes, and would frequently stop and contemplate. Well, I was actually catching my breath every several minutes, both to see how far I had come and also how far I still had to go. At the rate I was going, I figured it would take at least a week of twice daily attacks before I got to the neighbor's driveway. My hearing apparatus was tucked deeply into a pocket rather than on my ear. More than once it had fallen off into the weeds unbeknownst while I was working. I kept it in my pocket in case of the unlikely event that some hearing person would stop by and I would need to connect with them. Well, it finally paid off. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a motion. When I turned to see, there was a man waving frantically with both arms. Evidently, he had been speaking to me. Who knows how long before I noticed him. I stood up and told him to wait while I put on my hearing accessory. He must have driven by. His truck was further down the road. I didn't see it at first. And decided that he could help. He saw my pitiful battery-powered weed whip and said he could do the whole patch from where I was to the neighbor's driveway in 10 minutes. That actually took over 30. When I asked him what it would cost, he said it was free. So I consigned myself to my role of sitting in my plastic chair watching him while waving to all the passing cars. I must admit this was much more fun. When he finished, his brow not even sweating, he came up to me, still basking in my chair, and we reached out and shook hands as I thanked him. I did not know his last name, where he lived, if he had a family, if he went to church, if he had hobbies, the handy questions we reserved for casual conversations. I did not tell him I was a clergywoman married to another woman with 10 grandkids between us. It simply didn't matter. The simple act of kindness was all that mattered to bind us at a much deeper level. He generously offered help to a total stranger, one he might not ever see again, and I graciously accepted his help. We were, for that moment, simply two human beings bound together by kindness and love. It's hard work choosing to live in peace. It's so easy to stir up our litigious nature, like a greyhound chasing after the stuffed rabbit on the racetrack. It is still tempting to fight over minor vexations, minor grudges. Some people even incite it in a quest for drama and verification that they are right. But we were built for community. Decades ago, when I lived near the West Coast, I loved looking for moonstones, also called agates. They were all different sizes and shapes and colors. When I had enough, I got my rock grinder to make them smoother. This consisted in filling the tank with the stones and rough sand, then turning on the tumbler with the water and sand for weeks so that they not only rubbed against the sand but each other. Then another turn with the finer grain, then ultimately very fine-grained sand to burnish the finish. I kept them in a clear bottle that had floated the oceans and arrived intact at the beach. Then I put it on our altar to be a reminder of how we burnish each other by rubbing against each other's perfection and imperfections and learning how to conquer our divisions. So that was what the early church tried to do as it was forming into a community. It is still a fight. We look for, even at times, revel in our differences rather than that which holds us together and makes us more perfect. St. Augustine of Hippo of the 4th century Common Era said these timeless words, translated, in essentials unity, in non-essentials liberty, and in all things charity. Let us take heed and do the work.